All right, what's up, everybody? It is April 2025. It's the 21st to be specific. I'm going to try to get this onto the YouTube channel tomorrow. The 22nd will be a Tuesday. And it's a fast and furious year. A lot has happened since I last interviewed Brian Hale. Every month for going on 2 years, year and a half now. We've been having a conversation around what's happening in the industry and what's the signal. There's a lot of noise, but there's also a lot of signal in the market right now. So, Brian, welcome, my friend.
Thank you, Dave, as always. You know what I love about these, Dave, is that deep preparation we do, which is to say none.
Well, I'm going to debate you on that because while we don't actually rehearse this call,
Right.
we've spent our whole lifetimes as leaders in this
Exactly.
mortgage industry.
That's the prep. I agree with you.
We are prepared
Right.
to have a conversation around what's happening right now in the market and
People
what
always say,
should.
"Are you ready on these things?" Maybe I was born ready.
We do not like sometimes Brian will start to try to prep with me. I'm like, dude, time out.
Yeah, no prep.
Let's just go live.
Exactly.
All right. So before we get into, we use the term rocket proof. Um, Before we get into that, like what's going on with rates? What's the market? Are we going to see a rate and term refi this year, according to Brian Hale? What's your prognostics, just macroeconomic?
Last week, I would have said maybe. And by the way, that was not a convicted maybe. That was a maybe. As of this morning, I would say the likelihood of rate and term refis went down precipitously. And look, you and I always, I think, are careful to avoid, a bunch of political commentary in these discussions. And so this is not a political commentary. I'm just going to tell you this. This is just a statement of truth. The administration, I think, thinks they're in charge. The bond market's in charge. Period. No debate. It's not even close. Not even close. It's not, it's a tug of war. Not even close. And that was demonstrated this morning. It was demonstrated once before when we backed off the tariffs for 90 days at the behest of Secretary Bessent, the Treasury Secretary. And I'm hoping, and I'm hoping this really for the industry. I don't care about your politics. I'm hoping this for the industry and for real estate in general, that cooler heads suggest, you know what, in about a year, you're going to be able to replace Powell anyway. And there are two big issues that happened this morning. One, the bond market decided to show who's in charge. So that became clear based on the commentary and the social media stuff about firing Powell and he's a loser and all this kind of stuff. Oh, by the way, sir, you appointed him. So I'm not sure what that says about your picking skills. Secondly, the dollar is the other big story here. The dollar is devaluing, which is why gold is going through the roof. I think gold hit an all-time high today. And so just simple math, right? If you think you bought a bond at 4.5 or 4.4, you think you're going to get that for 10 years already, you know that your return is devalued by inflation, right? On top of that, if the dollar sinks 10%, your return is reduced by another 10% off the top, which means you have to demand higher and higher yields on your bond in order to meet your return hurdle that you're trying to get. So we have to be, we're in very perilous times here. So I don't want to be super negative, but it's just a statement of fact. And I'm hoping cooler heads prevail. And somebody says, look, why don't we do this? Why don't we just not go to war with Powell? A year from now, his term is up. You get to do whatever you want to do, whenever you want to do it. Cool. Let's just keep it to ourselves because I just think the bond market will punish commentary.
Got it. So right now, the moment we have rate and term refi is not looking good. Although apps are still up, and I am,
Apps are up.
When I talk to the most successful mortgage advisors, that's who I interview on this YouTube show. They're doing good. I mean, they're gaining
purchases have been up because we're in spring season, right? I think the consumer, the home buyer, is adjusting a little bit to rates. But in certain markets, I talked to a senior executive at Guild today, and he oversees the Vegas market as part of his dirt. He was telling me that in the builder business in Vegas, 85% of the builder business in Vegas is now controlled by the big dog builders. And so they're fighting over the 15%, right? And that's shrinking on an ongoing basis. So I want to be a little careful. I think refis, you and I've talked about this a bunch. I've been preaching it on the weekly roadmap. You have record high equity in homes, $40 trillion of equity, record high consumer debt, record high, increasing delinquencies across all of consumer debt. So there's debt consol, there's home improvement. And I think, we're 3 years in now where we've been making mortgages up around 7 or higher. And so there are some rate and terms, but it's not enough, Dave, to bail out the industry and to fix the things the industry has ailing it. And so, yes, refis popped up because rates came down briefly. I think it got a lot of consumer eyeballs, but it's not. This isn't bailout time.
Yeah.
Individual originators, great ones, are killing it. Why? Because they're great.
Yeah. Well, I don't think the playbook, the plays that win have ever been so clear as to how to win, and the
Agreed.
plays to struggle have never been more clear.
Right.
So let's get into the big signal, and we put it in the headline here, how to rocket proof mortgage careers at scale. And when I say rocket proof, I mean Rocket it's one company, a big company that made a big acquisition since we talked last
Two,
on
two,
March. What's that?
two big acquisitions.
Yeah, two back acquisitions. But since you and I talked last, we talked about the Redfin. We did not talk about Mr. Cooper, which
Yeah.
was literally announced on the last day of March. This is the first time Brian and I could
Yeah.
get schedules to work here in April. Greg Shear did a great interview of Varun, the CEO of Rocket
Uh,
today. I would recommend, we'll put a link down below. Highly recommend all mortgage professionals, whether you're a loan officer, a manager, an
I agree.
executive, you should,
If you're a
anytime,
board member, I'd be watching it.
if you're a what?
A board member of a company, I'd be
Yeah,
watching it.
yeah, no, everybody. If you sell tech to the mortgage industry, you should be watching that. Great job, Greg. You did a fantastic interview. So let's you and I talk about how could, and let's keep it executive level, um, rocket proof careers. Like to me, if you're local, you've got a real clear path to win long term in this industry, whether it's Rocket or who knows who's next. Like, well, by the way, do you think this is the last big deal of
No,
the year?
no. Look, I've been interviewed a bunch of times on this topic. Here's the good news of the Rocket deal. I think generally, at least in my 40-year career, the end of bad cycles are often epitomized by a bunch of really big mergers and acquisitions. And so I think this is probably one of several that we're going to see. Way back early in my career, you'll remember this when Norwest bought Prudential Home Loans. That was number one buying number two at the time. I mean, it was massive at the time. Tragically, they never executed on it, right? So this whole thing, let me just put out, and I know you agree with me, this is subject to execution, right? Between Rocket, Redfin, and Coop, they've piled up a bunch of clay on a potter's wheel. Now somebody has to sculpt that thing into a beautiful vase and execute and deliver. By the way, I believe they will. A lot of talent in all three of those organizations. Varun's a smart guy. Jay, brilliant guy, ex-CFO, very financial, is going to be the president of Rocket, coming from Coop's side. A lot of talent, a lot of capital, a lot of invested piece. Let's get this out. The organizations now control 1 in 6 mortgages in America from a servicing standpoint, right? So they have access. Many of those 1 in 6 were acquired TPO from brokers and correspondents and others. So here's a hint: if you want to do refis, really smart folks at Rocket, who has an 83% capture rate on their own portfolio, on top of Coop, put those two together. If you're not talking to your consumer in terms of rocket proofing your business, if you're not already talking to that customer that your company sold to Mr. Cooper, you better be, because there's a bunch of really smart mofos over there that are going to figure out how to get that refi when or if it's due and ready, and the next purchase, by the way. So 1 in 6, Redfin brings 50 million hits to their portal a month. Dave, you and I could be the two dumbest clucks that ever walked. You give us 50 million swings at the ball a month, we're going to do some loans,
Yeah,
right?
and purchase. But I do want to call out, guys, when you think of the formula to win long term and win right now in this market. Number one, win your database, and that means you need to be monitoring your
Been
database for
talking about
sales.
this since, man, since there
Yeah.
was a database.
Well, I mean, it's always been the biggest priority, but I mean, it's never, and if you are a leader of local professionals, it's time to lead. We're rolling out a new program right now that we call Coach the Coach. And basically it's branch managers, like branch managers, most of you are producing, and it's time for you to lead by example, win your database, and then inspire the mortgage professionals around you to win the database. And if you win your database, you're going to have a great seat by the way, that's one of a few things.
Oh, that's not one phone call. How you doing, Dave? Okay, nice talking to you, right?
No.
That's an ongoing dialogue on an ongoing basis. And look, if so, anyway, just to get the rest of the math out, right? I mean, it's at least 1 in 6. I think it'll be bigger than that. I think 1 + 1 there probably equals 2.5, maybe 3, right? In terms of their reach, scalability. And so you've got a big new dog that's going to invest in technology that owns the transaction start to finish, who can bring scale. They have lower comp salespeople, which means they can do it with lower margins and a better price. So I think this is people. Somebody asked me this. I think might have been Greg Scheer. Asked me early on an interview on this one, the day it got announced. I said, he asked me, do I think this is like, game, set, match? No. I think a lot of executives and a lot of companies and a lot of mortgage professionals, the good ones, will still continue to thrive, certainly for some time. But I do think this is a big indicator of the future of our business, where you have top of the funnel control, cradle to grave relationships with consumers, and it becomes very difficult to crack into that, particularly if you can show up with a great price, great delivery, great service, do it at the top of the funnel, deliver those leads out to other folks that can sell the house. They're going to be a tough competitor. And
Yeah.
so, great topic that you've described, rocket proof your business, because they're coming.
Yeah. And the term I've heard a few times now, first heard it from Ron Stillers, which is click to final payment, tip to tail. But I really like that click to final payment because the final payment is when that consumer no longer needs a mortgage and they have achieved financial freedom. And for some people, achieving financial freedom is having enough money in the bank to where paying off that mortgage is a strategic financial planning decision. But I want every local referral-based professional, I want you to audit yourself on a scale of 5, 1 to 5. 5 is mastery, like you know it, you're doing it, it's a habit. You can teach other loan officers to doing it, and your results prove it. Level 5 is all of those, and your results prove that you are winning your database.
Can I give
Uh,
one other thing to audit themselves on?
yeah,
An immense sense of urgency. Do it now. I mean, I can't emphasize this enough. Complacency in our business is rampant. And it's, to me, a death sentence. Whether you're an originator, an executive, you're running a company, you're a board member, whatever, if you don't recognize what's going on around you, it may be too late. So complacency is death. Urgency in everything you're doing. You don't have to get it perfect. You got to move forward, win, learn, do, right? I mean, just keep doing it, but you have to have a sense of urgency. If I was a great originator today, or I was running a company, a mortgage company today, I'd have a sense of fear. And I'd want to share it with all of my teammates. Giddy up, giddy up.
yeah, I like that. At least for a month or so, I'm gonna create a playlist in our YouTube channel that I just gonna call it the Rocket Proof playlist. This will be the first interview that will go in there. I'm also tomorrow, by the time you watch this, I may have already done it, where I'll be interviewing Jason Mitchell, the #1 realtor in America, on this topic. I'm also interviewing Daniel Saw later in the week, and next week, Shayla Gifford. Also, guys, Brian Hale is, every Friday he's delivering amazing content live, and then the platform that he has, the weekly
The weekly
roadmap.
roadmap. Yeah.
The weekly roadmap. I almost said mortgage advisory's partner, and I'm like, wait,
All
that's
right.
Yeah, you need to
But
get a little.
we just had your good
We need to
friend.
turn that into a weekly roadmap.
I
You
know
know.
exactly. I need to get it from behind me, but I just had Nicole Ruth, who's a good friend of yours, obviously, and just a brilliant thinker on last Friday, and she just fired up the crowd. I mean, people were really inspired. But you talk about a sense of urgency, a sense of now, a sense of presence every day, all day. She gets up at 2 o'clock in the morning and gets at this thing. That's urgency. That's recognizing that, man, she doesn't even know who's chasing her. She just knows somebody's chasing her. Giddy up.
By the way, she's a really good example of what I'm going to say. And paradigm number two is win your zip code. And I want zip code to be a metaphor because it, like in Nicole's case, she's going for Denver, Colorado. She's trying to win multiple zip codes. And then I also think, there's mortgage professionals that are winning a niche like doctor loans or helping military families. So
Right.
when I say win your zip code, it's like win a niche, win a market, and if you're local, I would make sure like it's local because no matter how good Zillow gets, like they can't be Nicole Ruth, who is helping families build wealth with real estate in Denver, Colorado. She's got a brand, she wins her database. Thoughts on that, Brian?
I agree totally. Look, and I've talked about this before. I think the people who get pinched are the people who don't understand the question you just asked, right? Meaning that group of originators or companies in the middle that thinks nothing is changing around me, so I have no urgency to act, and are complacent about their model. Why? Because, hey, I've done this for 20 years and it's worked for me till this point. And look, the world is changing. Every dynamic, we don't know what rates are going to be this afternoon, say nothing of next month or next year, right? And so you've got all these variables floating in the air. You have to be able to not only have a sense of urgency, but I'll use a sailing metaphor. You have to be able to trim your sails and react to the wind on a moment's notice. So you can't get locked into this is how I do business. This is the only way I've ever done it. You need a lot of different tools in your toolbox. And I think the originators who have those and can deploy and can move and adjust are going to win.
Yeah, well, that brings up another point. I don't know where we'll put this on the list, but it just comes down to like the master skill of the time right now is unlearning, relearning, and learning, and just this perpetual change management. Because that was one thing I really liked in Greg's interview with the CEO of Rocket. He asked him something to the effect of, "Hey, did you always see this coming?" And he was kind of getting him to describe. AI. And did you see this coming? And he really talked about how he's just focused on looking for the signal in the market right now and then being reactive to that signal. It's not about forecasting what's going to happen 3 years from now. It's like what's happening right now, and then who can orient, make decisions, and act. OODA loop. Observe, orient, decide, and act. And whoever can do the OODA loop the fastest is going to be fine. Thoughts on that?
I agree totally. Look, when I ran companies, we used to do, 13-month forward forecasting, year forward forecasting, 3-year forward forecasting every month, right? It wasn't, oh, it's budget season, right? Because our business can change on a dime. And I've talked about this before. The two biggest things that really impact our business are interest rates, the regulatory environment, and you can do nothing about either one of them.
Right.
So if you realize that, right, the correlation of revenue in the mortgage business to the 10-year treasury, meaning if the treasury is worsening, your revenues are going down. If the treasury is improving, if rates are improving, your revenues per loan are going up. There's about a 78 or 9% mathematical correlation between the two, right? You can't control that. And we just saw this morning one errant social media post, boom, we lost 8 basis points in like a blink, right, in the process. And so if you can't be adaptive, and I think you have to think about your business on an ongoing basis. Okay, it could be, to your point, it could be this, it could be this, and it could be 15 scenarios in between. What have you done to think about how you react to all those scenarios and what are you doing to prepare your team? And that's a team, whether you're an originator team, you're running a division as a head of production, or you're running a company, or you're sitting on a board. If you're not, they call it stochastic modeling, right? If you're not stochastic modeling in your head all the time, thinking about all possible variables, I think you're missing the point.
I agree. So let me call out
That's
another.
what you hear from Varun, right? Is look, he can't predict the future any better than anybody else can. What he can do is prepare his company for a variety of outcomes.
Yeah, agreed. So what do you think about this next paradigm of success for local originators? Because they can't truly, and even brokers, guys, you cannot truly compete on price and speed and convenience.
Scale.
Can you be competitive on price, convenience, and speed? Absolutely, and you have to be. But if you're going to truly have a unique competitive differentiator, I'm going to make the case that you need to be a local, like how do you leverage your locality and your proximity, data-driven coach. And you need to truly deliver advice around how to achieve financial freedom through real estate and debt management. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, look, you if you can't control the local piece, look, I think, and I don't know if I haven't seen the whole interview this morning, but I've known Rocket for a long time. I've known all the players over there for a long time. I have a lot of respect for everybody there. To be blunt, for many years, maybe even until recently, they were never really able to crack the code of getting realtors to refer them business. They did their fair share, but it was never a dominant thing. And we'll see whether it all works. That said, um, the reality of it is that you have to be able to be better at them locally. You have to have a deeper relationship with your customer database. Remember, they're going to control an immense amount of data. They don't just have 1 in 6 mortgages. Coop has the data from every mortgage they've ever serviced, every buyer they've ever serviced. Same with Rocket. Same with all the data flowing into Redfin. They have all that data. You don't think they're hiring data scientists to sit back there and begin to predict likelihood of purchase, likelihood of refi, predictability of refi, put the offer in front of the customer? Of course they are. Of course they are, right? And so my hat's off to Varun to have seen that signal and say, all right, I run a publicly traded company where my shares are, bid every day. How do I prepare for all these variabilities? And I think, you can do it at your own size, but how do you rocket proof? You're going to need scale. You're going to need data. You're going to need to have that deep relationship with your customer. And oh, by the way, and this is going to be really unpopular, Dave, if I can, with some of your audience, I think one of the things that's missed in this whole connection of these three companies coming together, and as we said before, I think you're going to see more of these deals get done with more. So you could have one company have 1 in 6. You could have another company have 1 in 6. Now it's a third, right? Um, one of the things I think is going to be really critical here to pay attention to is the impact on revenue per loan and the impact on compensation. You can't have one or two big players do 1 in 6 or 1 in 3 at materially lower pricing, meaning materially lower revenue, meaning materially lower sales compensation and cost to produce, and simply defy what's going on around you. I think long term, you're going to have a compression effect here as these big mergers control more and more of the food chain on a go forward basis. So, what does that suggest? How do you prepare? What are you doing to think about that now? How would you
Yeah,
run your business differently in that kind of an environment?
yeah, I agree. And then the four things we just talked about: win your database, win your zip code, be a local data-driven coach, and OODA loop, just adapt quickly. I mean, those are all things that a loan officer could hear. But to me, the thing, if you're a C-suite executive or you're a branch manager, to rocket proof the careers of the people that you serve, you have to get adoption going forward. You need the loan officers to
Yes.
adopt your technology in a best practice way. And it's no longer like pushing them. You need to be successful at that. And so one of the things we're doing is focusing on coach to coach. Like how do we directly impact the branch manager And if you're a branch manager, the best way that you can help your loan officers is by leading by example.
Bingo.
Like the
Yeah, I was
positive
just
energy
gonna say
that
that.
you get by just inspiring them and leading by example and then celebrating the people that follow. Like if you truly, again, if you're, and by the way, if you're a regional or a executive, like it is time to lean into your producing managers, get their buy-in, use data and scorecarding to track them. But to me, that's key. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, look, I had an old peer. She had this great saying. Sometimes when you're managing a sales force or your team, people get themselves into this loop where, like, you sit a 5-year-old down at the piano and they're playing and learning, and you're just using a megaphone and screaming at them, play better, play better, play better, right? Anybody who's had kids or you had a dog, that doesn't work, right? And so, one, how do you demonstrate? Secondly, however, I think accountability has to come into play here. And any good leader, you still only have 24/7, right? You don't have 40-hour days. So where and how do you spend your time and effort in coaching? And if you've got folks who are simply totally resistant, I think you got to coach, you got to coach, you got to coach. And then at some point, you have to face off that perhaps a better career path is better for that person. So you can then take your coaching to the folks who are willing to adapt and adopt those things you're trying to demo and show how. So, yeah, it's personal usage, it's showing the results, it's sitting down and helping people and have you understand what's keeping them from adapting a known strategy. I had Joe Massey on the Weekly Roadmap a couple of weeks ago, and every time he comes on, and this is true of Nicole and Jeremy and Sean and all these guys, they come on and show people on my call. Here's the bike. Here's how you get on the bike. Here's how you pedal the bike. Go. And then some people don't, and some people do. Some people are inspired, right? And in every one of those cases, there's 50,000 a month of commissions available to somebody who got on the bike, pedaled the bike, and followed the process, right? Yet some don't. And I think as a leader, you got to be able to separate and apply your time and energy and effort to those who will adapt and adopt. And
Yeah.
people who just say, no, I won't, I don't want to, yet you see their business tailing off. I think you got to be careful putting too much energy into folks who will never adopt.
Yeah, let's talk about that and then any closing thoughts you have. But I did a post a couple weeks ago that you commented on where I said, never give up on yourself. And I even talked about
I agree with that.
not giving up on your team. And I want to make it clear what I was applying there is that there are people that work for you that still have potential and they haven't left you yet, that you shouldn't give up on them. And the only time you
Agreed.
give up on someone is when they're gone. And now there is a time to force that. So you first of all, you had a really good quote that I want you to share if you remember it. If you don't, I do. But tell me, go a little deeper on your philosophy because I don't want to say like managers need to like, hey, this week you need to let go of everyone who's not performing.
No, no, no.
But you need to have a
Look,
plan and you need to communicate effectively to them so that they have a chance. Like
yes.
there's a lot of people where they've given up, but they haven't really given up. They're just there, but they're not helping them.
Yeah, look, I think you have to be very careful. And I don't remember exactly which quote I shot to you, but I have a bunch of those. But one of them is, and it was from an old mentor of mine that, you should be very careful. And I want to be careful here. I'm not calling anybody this. You should be very careful trying to teach a pig to sing, because at the end of the day, all you do is frustrate yourself. You annoy the pig because pigs don't sing. And there are some people in our business who are simply never going to adopt or adapt to the business, and or don't have it within them to embrace the very behaviors that'll make them successful. And all I'm suggesting is you want to be very careful. I see managers all the time. They'll spend 80% of their time coaching those people as opposed to the top 50% that they've got that can make them better because they already have inherent skills that can be made better. And I'm with you. I don't want to give up early. I've had people work for me that I thought never going to happen. And they ended up being literally some of the top producers I've ever worked with in my life, because like the bulb just went off one day and they got it, right? They got it. So it's a fine line. You're never perfect in those situations, but carrying somebody beyond their, if they should be doing something else in life, I think one of the best things you can do with people is help them get to where they can be successful in life and in their career. And if it's not with you or not in the mortgage business, so be it.
Yeah,
So,
the quote had something to do with the most expensive.
oh yeah, yeah, I know that one. The most
What is it?
expensive time you spend in life is that time between when you've given up on somebody and you do something about it.
Boom.
Boom.
Write that down,
If
guys. Do
you've given
something
up
about it.
on that person, but it's an uncomfortable conversation. I don't really want to have it. Their daughter brings in Girl Scout cookies to the branch every year, and those. I got it. Do your job.
Yeah, it's go time,
Your
guys.
job is helping that person get to where they can be a success in life. Because people who are failing, they know they're failing. Move them on, and then coach the hell out of the rest of your team.
Yep. Win your database, win your zip code.
Yes.
Uh, as you're listening to this, it's a great time to start masterminding as an industry. I am going to put together some local, regional masterminds. I'm trying to debate what cities I'm going to do them in. I'm going to invite Brian to all of them.
Yeah, I'd be glad to.
If he's available, it'll be Brian and I putting on a local mastermind. I'm also going to fly in a day early, maybe stay a day late as I go to some events this year. But it's time, guys. It's time to rally. It's time to come together and help each other. Brian, any closing thoughts or things you want to make sure we cover before we run out
Yeah,
of time?
look, we started with rocket proofing your business, and I think it's a great buzz phrase to think about it. What it really is future proofing your business. Rocket is but one that's in the press today. I think you're going to see others. I cannot imagine that Zillow doesn't marry with somebody and do this again, or Realtor.com, or all these other players that are out there. And
Hey, Brian, anybody outside the industry that you think like a Home Depot or what do you think the odds of Zillow, really entering the housing platform, the home ownership platform as
first of all, I'm a stockholder, but secondly, if I wasn't, I cannot imagine that the day the Rocket Redfin, I think Rocket Redfin was like, that's interesting. Then all followed right away with Rocket Redfin Coop, Mr. Cooper. I think there were a lot of people in executive suites and boardrooms going, wow, I hadn't thought about that. It wasn't on my bingo card. Now that it's on your bingo card, how does it force you to think about your business? And I think everybody in this space, huge real estate firms, the Zillows of the world, the Realtor.coms of the world, and or conceivably non-obvious competitors that say, wait a minute, we see other opportunities in here with this data to sell additional things. So how could we bring all these pieces together quickly? And I think you're going to see some additional portals get acquired. There are other models that are floating around that are below the waterline that people can't see, and those sharks are going to bite. And not to say that every deal will be successful, because some of these might not execute well, but we're at that point where there's a lot of capital available to invest in this space and to take advantage of what it could only be described as a fairly inefficient industry for the last 20 years. And it's just every time you see it happen, you see disruption. And I think Varun is at the beginning, but he's not going to be at the end by any stretch with
yeah,
Rocket.
and
So look, I think if you're running a company, scale matters. All of a sudden, M&A is going up again. Talent matters. Data matters. Technology matters. Thinking about it, think of the voice of the customer. How do you take friction, start to finish, out of the process and lower cost to give you a competitive advantage? And I think that's from the C-suite down to an originator level, branch manager, everybody in between has to be thinking about that, about their business. And then you got to be honest with yourself. You can't look at data and see that it's not working and then look away and go, wow, that's ugly, but I'm not going to do anything about it. Complacency kills.
Wow, lots to think about. Another closing push on my part, and I'll give you the final words, Brian. Are think scorecarding and think about if you're a distributed retail and you've got local loan officers, what is the one scorecard they look at all the time? And that's production. You know, who's winning, loans closed, who's winning, production. What if you started putting right next to that effectiveness performance, like
Right.
conversion rates,
Right.
credit report to app to funding, and literally you had that side by side.
Cost to acquire. Right.
What if you had things around profitability? Like, let's face it, the loan officer that has the fewest price concessions is the loan officer who is the best salesperson. That is that is their sales score. Now, I do realize there are variables by how people price. Some people price to get concessions, but there's a way for you to create a scorecard around concessions. That's value quality and conversion, and put that right next to, how many loans did you close, what your performance is. What are your thoughts on the getting more innovative and getting more thoughtful about scorecarding?
Look, it's the essence of my organization, right? When we look at how we think about the business from the mortgage advisory partner side, I have, for my money, Tracy Lewis, who works for me with me on a lot of these things, is maybe the best financial analyst in the business, hands down. And the ability to granularly understand your math. And I would say, Dave, in general, as an industry, we're not good at it. We
No.
tend to take what I call the big bucket approach to accounting. All revenue in the top of the bucket, boom, 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 we spend it out. Oh, look at that, we made a profit. That's not the game. How do we optimize? How do we optimize the sales force? How do we know who's contributing and who's detracting? Right. And look, if anybody watching this wants some help around that, we have a set of reports we can do with you. We can show you some of these philosophies. I'm not doing a mortgage advisory partners commercial here, but if you don't have the internal skill set to do this, or you've never done it and you don't even know what I'm talking about from a data analysis standpoint, call me, call Dave, call somebody, get some help, because if you don't understand your numbers, somebody else will, and we're back to complacency again.
Well,
You gotta have a sense of urgency.
Well, Brian Hale is very active on LinkedIn. Make sure you follow him. You can private message him. We'll put his contact information down below in show notes. Also, he runs one of the best sales meetings every single week in the industry. So if you're a loan
9
officer,
a.m. Pacific every Friday morning, weekly roadmap, one word.
yeah, weekly roadmap. What's the best way for anyone that wants to sign up? I know I don't know if it's a free trial. You have some way for people to experience it.
You can go to the weekly roadmap. You can go to our mortgage advisory, mortgageap.com is our website. Just go there. And you can, by the way, if you subscribe, it is a subscription call, but if you subscribe, you get the first 2 weeks for free. And if you don't like it, you can cancel. It didn't cost you a nickel.
Beautiful.
Come in. In fact, Dave Savage is going to be our guest on May 2nd. Encourage you to come. We have really great talent that's in. And if you're a member, you get to see everything we've already done and be able to rewatch it and do it. There's an app. You get a free newsletter every Friday that gives you a lot of insight on the market. So subscribe, give it a try. You don't like it, you can kill it. No big deal.
So that link will be down below. Remember, here at Trust Engine and what we call the Mortgage Coach Next Generation, we turn loan officers into data-driven coaches. So if you need help with that, link down below. And then also another great resource out there is the modernmortgageiq.com. It's got a free assessment in a minute to 5 minutes. See, people actually do it in a minute. Some people takes 3 to 5. You'll get an assessment as to where are you as a modern mortgage advisor. All right, Brian, I appreciate you, brother. Any last thoughts before we call it a month?
Urgency, urgency. Everything is moving around you. You cannot stand still. You have to assess all the tools Dave talked about. Don't be complacent. Have a sense of urgency and a sense of now. You too can be a winner in this space into the future, but not if you don't accept the fact that everything around you is changing.
Time to upgrade. We'll see if we have another big news flash between now and our May update, but it is possible.
If
If
we
you
do,
are
we
not
can always do an interim update. So
Yeah, we could do an enter update. Put comments and questions down below. We'll make sure we cover them last time. If you are not following the Mortgage Coach YouTube channel, follow it right now. Also, make sure you're active in our Facebook group. SavageInsights.com is a website that I update daily with whoever I'm interviewing next. Plus, there's a Savage Insiders mobile club where I send out a text, 2 or 3 texts a week that are all designed to modernize loan officers, go from loan officer to data-driven coach. Thank you, Brian. You're the man,
Thank you,
bro.
David. My best to your
Appreciate you.
audience. Take care.
Take care, everybody. This is a wrap.